Hello and welcome. My name is Tom, and this is the Enthusiasm Project, Season 5, Episode 2. I sound surprised every time I say the episode numbers because it just feels like so many of them. But yeah, thank you for listening. I appreciate it. Thanks to everyone who listened to last week's episode, the Season 5 premiere. I do, just before we jump into stuff today, want to let everyone know that you definitely want to stick around until the end of today's podcast because I have some replies from last week and a very special surprise. So reply and surprise. But before we do that, let's talk about what we're here to discuss, which is protecting your YouTube channel. This is something that I have been terrified about lately, and so I would like to share my fear with you. I would like to spread the fear because this is a very serious thing, actually. And it's a serious thing for anybody who has a YouTube channel. It doesn't matter at what level. But if you're somebody who does it full-time or part-time with the intent to go full-time, then this takes on a whole different thing, because the last thing you would want is for something to happen to your YouTube channel where it disappears. And there are, there's no, I guess I should say my brain broke. It's not a surprise that there are things that just happen that have been happening, like hacking channels and that sort of stuff, where things get taken over, or they even get held for ransom, or they get deleted and stuff like that. That has been going on for a long time, but I want to talk about that so we can figure out ways to try and keep yourself safe there. But what is even worse now, and I never wanted to be somebody who criticizes YouTube because I really love YouTube as a platform. It's amazing. It's like one of my favorite modern creations in the world. I absolutely do love it very, very much. So I don't want to be one of the people that's just like poo-pooing on YouTube. However, in the past, I would say 4 months maybe, it really seems like there has been a shift in how some kind of like spam or something algorithm is working, and stuff is getting handled differently, like really aggressively, which makes sense because there's so many weird scams and things that happen on YouTube that they need to up they just need to up the level of, protection, I guess, that they're using. However, it's almost like too much, because what I have seen now time and again are people who are not doing anything wrong having issues. And one big example actually would be right now, I'm recording this on July 15th, and I should probably check this before I talk about it, but it just came into my brain right now. But Graham Stephan, who has like a YouTube channel with over 3 million subscribers, does a lot of financial stuff. His channel was scheduled to be deleted yesterday. I'm guessing that didn't happen. And if you've seen his videos or you've seen any of the responses to that, the long and short of it is that there are a lot of fake accounts that use his name and his profile picture, and they post spam comments that even be like, it'd be the same thing as his name with his profile picture, and it'll be, enter this thing, text this WhatsApp number, or some weird spammy thing that's not him. A lot of people now use comments that say pinned by the person who owns the channel. So instead of being Tom Buck, it'll be like pinned by Tom Buck. So people will see that and they'll think that it's a pinned comment when it's really not. And then they'll pay more attention to it. And it's all scammy. And YouTube has gone out of their way to try to detect those so they can eliminate that. And I guess the problem was that his actual channel got swept up in like this sea of fake channels and was just scheduled for termination, even though he's like, I have not done anything wrong. I have not spammed anything. Channel has over 3 million subscribers. Please don't just randomly delete it. It's kind of an important thing. And I'm guessing that got sorted out because it's now a day later and I haven't heard that it was deleted. But that is terrifying. And what's even more, I guess there's no way that it's not terrifying, because if you have a small channel, it feels like you're less likely to be targeted, but also you'd have no recourse. Like if you have a 500 subscriber channel, which is a huge accomplishment. So please, if you have 500 subscribers, congrats, like celebrate that. But like YouTube's not going to pay any attention to you. But at the flip side of it, if you have a larger channel, we'll say over 100,000 subscribers, it kind of also seems like you're probably more targeted for these scams because you have a larger audience and a larger channel, but it doesn't seem like you have a lot of protection either, unless somebody just happens to see the right thing. And we'll kind of talk about that. So what we want to do today is make sure that you are able to keep your YouTube channel safe. This is sort of like those things where people go, this is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. And then they just give you financial advice for 20 minutes, which is silly. Like, why not just say, yes, it is financial advice, but I don't guarantee any of it. So I'm giving you security advice for YouTube, but I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm just saying this is stuff that I do. This is stuff that I've learned from other people. And this is stuff based on things that I have seen. So obviously, any of the stuff I'm talking about today isn't going to like guarantee that your channel will never get hacked and nothing will ever go wrong. But I do think there are some very practical, real world steps you can take to protect yourself and protect your channel and the thing that you built. And we'll kind of go through those, and I have some examples. So, of course, there is a video version of today's podcast. If you're on Patreon, you can check that out. Or if you're a YouTube channel member, you'll be able to see that as well. And if the reason I bring that up is because I'll be doing some screen shares so you can actually see. But if you're listening to the audio-only version, you'll be able to follow along just fine. So don't worry about that too much. Anyway, so we're going to kind of jump straight into that. The biggest thing here to talk about is there's sort of two sides that you need to protect yourself from. And one of them is all of the nefarious, like the bad people who are out there, hackers and things like that, which sounds, I feel like, such a paranoid person. Like, am I going to get hacked? But kind of, it is a very realistic thing. That's not new to the platform. But what is new is now the second thing you need to protect yourself from, which is YouTube itself. Because as it's growing and as they've just unleashed these very aggressive AIs that don't really seem to differentiate, they don't understand nuance. And unfortunately, there's not like a team of people behind it to like, we'll let the AI or the algorithm go do its thing and we'll stand back here and kind of keep an eye on it and make sure it's doing things well. It doesn't really seem like that's the case because so many just bizarre things are happening. So we're going to start talking about, hacking, I guess, first. Which has been an issue for ages. And there's a couple people I want to use as examples, which I did not ask for permission to use as examples, but they've all been very public about these things. And the first one is Kevin, the Basic Filmmaker, who is an amazing guy. He's like one of the people years before I had a YouTube channel. I would watch Kevin's channel and learn a lot from him and all that. And then I was fortunate enough to become friends with him over Twitter, and I've been able to be on his live streams, and he's great. He helped me so much when I was designing my course because he has so much experience in that. Just a really, really good guy. If you're familiar with like any of that sphere of people that Kevin orbits within, you probably know that his channel got hacked and deleted in February of this year. And it was gone for over a month. And it was very, very scary. And he just was very open about the whole process. He handled it really well. And eventually his channel came back. But even after the channel came back, it like didn't fully come back because he has his analytics, and you can see that even like there's a point where his channel was performing and then it was hacked, and obviously it went down to 0 for like 5 or 6 weeks because the channel didn't exist, and then it came back, but the numbers were super low. And he brought that up to YouTube going like, I think there's some kind of shadow ban or some kind of suppression on my channel, and YouTube told him, no, that's not the case. Like, it makes sense that your numbers would be lower because your channel was gone for a long time, so your viewers aren't used to seeing you. And he didn't buy that, and I don't really buy that either, because he does a pretty dedicated community of people who are also like fighting for him to get his channel back. So it doesn't make sense that the numbers would be so much lower afterwards. It does make sense that what happened in his case was people got into his channel, deleted all his stuff, and started running like a Bitcoin live stream. I have no idea what the end goal is with those. Somehow they scam people out of money. I don't understand how it works. It's like the people who call about your car warranty, where I know it's a scam, but I don't know what the end game is. Like, ultimately, maybe it's just to get your credit card number. Whatever means they can do that, that's what it is, I guess. Whatever. Anyway, it was running a live stream, a Bitcoin live stream scam for like a half hour, an hour, and then YouTube saw that and immediately shut it down and deleted it, which, as Kevin himself says, is a good thing because that was their way of preventing people from getting scammed. So it made sense that YouTube saw this channel who was doing this scam and then deleted it. That's not a bad thing. The bad thing is then picking up the pieces where it's like, clearly the guy who actually owns the channel wasn't doing it. Look, you can see like login information from different locations. You can see a total change in behavior. Like, why And I guess they had to do some investigation, and it took over a month to get everything back. And then I think once the channel came back, there was some kind of tag or marker or something where, like, somewhere within the YouTube algorithm or whatever, there's something that says this channel ran a scam thing. This channel it got in trouble. This is like got put in timeout for a while. So keep an eye on it. Maybe don't promote it as much, even though he did nothing wrong. And it's like really, really scary. And there's all kinds of other stuff that, like getting all of his comments back, not the ones people left, but the ones his channel left, which he was somebody who prided himself, even having a channel with well over 100,000 subscribers, on replying to every comment. And then like every comment he left had disappeared, which was like, that's a lot of work and a lot of relationship building and community building. And it was frustrating to see. He did get help, but it was like agonizing every single step of the way. And then it still wasn't perfectly resolved by the time it was resolved. And I don't know, he's done videos and things about his experience. So if you go look up Kevin the Basic Filmmaker and listen to some of his streams and stuff so you can hear the finer points of everything. I'm not entirely sure how his channel got hacked, but it ultimately came down to someone being able to log into his email for YouTube. And what he said was happening to him was one day he was just watching YouTube, like on I think he was on an iPad, he might have said. He was watching YouTube, and suddenly, like in the middle of doing something, it said like, please log in again. He was like, that's weird. And then he went to log in again, and it couldn't log in. It was like, invalid password, invalid password. It's like, what the heck? And then that's when people started sending him messages going like, is this a joke? What's happening on your channel? And it was this weird cryptocurrency scam. And so that scares me. So I think that had to do through email. That was a big one there. And then the other example that I want to use is Bandrew from Podcastage, who also, fortunately, his whole situation got resolved within like a day or two, but also was very frustrating and annoying. He did a whole podcast episode on this, so you can go to the Bandrew Says podcast and listen to that in his own words. I hate to put words in anybody's mouth, but essentially what happened there was he woke up one day to an email that said, your YouTube channel has been deleted for spam and all this stuff. And the channel that was targeted was just a personal channel that had like a couple hundred subscribers that only had recordings of him reading Grimm's fairy tales through different microphones. Like that's how he was doing microphone tests. So it wasn't like it was like the most innocent possible channel that there could be. And that's the one that got targeted for spam and deleted. However, so that wasn't a huge blow to like his business, but that same email was connected to his main channel, which is a huge channel, has like 250,000 subscribers. And because that got deleted, he then lost access to his main channel. So the main channel wasn't deleted, but he couldn't access anything to it. He was locked out of it, and YouTube couldn't help him. And fortunately, like he was able to reach out on Twitter, and a bunch of people, including me, sent Twitter things going like, this is not Twitter things on Twitter, sent team YouTube stuff saying this is a mistake, please look into it. And within a day they realized, okay, there's no spam here at all. We'll reinstate this channel. But what he was able to do in the meantime was add, I forget how this was. He explains it in his podcast, but he was able to somehow, even though YouTube on his account that got deleted was gone, he was able to go into that Google account settings and add a secondary email. So then he could go into an email and get access to YouTube through his other email. Like this is where Google is just like such a mess in terms of interfaces, because you have like settings for all these different things in different places. And, it's so messy and funky. And I guess because of that, he was able to get access to his channel again. And then fortunately, within a day or two, YouTube also came around and was like, oh, this is a mistake. We'll reinstate it. Everything's good. But yeah, that's kind of frustrating and kind of scary. So based on just what I have been doing myself for a while to try to be safe, which it scares me to even talk about this kind of stuff, but I think it's very, very important. And seeing what both of these people do, which especially Bandrew is somebody who like really champions being secure and being aware and protecting yourself from this stuff, and to see it happen to someone who's so good about managing those things was very, very scary. So anyway, Here's basically what we're going to talk about, and we're going to go through this. And the biggest thing, if you want any takeaway from today's episode, just know that if you want to protect yourself, one of the best things you can do is just have a whole bunch of email addresses. So get ready to make a lot of email accounts and have to check them regularly. And it's a complete pain in the butt to keep them all organized, to check them, to not get them mixed up, to use each one in specific ways. But it seems like one of the biggest things when it comes to YouTube channels getting deleted or hacked really has to do with email. And one of the biggest ones is having multiple channels connected to a single email. So right away, if you have multiple channels, each channel should have its own separate email address. It sounds very convenient to say, look, I can log in with one account and manage all these different channels. And that would be great in an ideal world where people don't do terrible things. But in our world where people do terrible things, and then also there are non-nuanced artificial intelligence systems that make judgment calls that aren't always correct, it's a really good idea to then protect yourself as best you can. So having a separate email for everything is hugely, hugely important. And then also checking them regularly, because that's where you're going to get some notifications. You're going to be able to see if something weird happens. So even though you have an email that you're like, I don't need this for anything, it's just so I can have a YouTube channel connected to it, you should still check it very regularly. I personally check everything once a day, usually. But if you did it, 3 to 5 times a week, that would probably at least keep you somewhat up to date, because you don't want to not check anything and then show up days or weeks later and realize something terrible happened and you were unaware of it, and now it's kind of too late to do anything. So that's a big thing. We're going to talk about what all those emails are going to do, so I'll walk you through exactly how to do that. But prior to that too, I want to mention, make sure you have 2-factor authentication turned on. I know that's not a perfect foolproof plan, but it does really, really help. So when you go into your YouTube account or your Google account, make sure you have 2-factor authentication turned on, which again can be a total pain, because when you log into something, it'll be like, hey, open up your Gmail app on your phone and type in this code or click on this number or whatever. But it's a good pain because it's helping to keep things safe. And then also, please, please, please use a password manager. If you have like a Mac or an iOS device that has a built-in password manager, I'm sure PCs and Android devices come with something similar, and there's tons of third-party options. Just make sure it's a reliable one. Personally, I use Dashlane, which has been great. It's not free, but it's very much worth its weight in gold, because not only does it manage all your passwords, but it just makes it so easy to generate passwords. And so what I do when I create a new password is I don't even know any of my passwords. It gives you different options. Like here, let me open up my Dashlane right now just so I can see. When you want to create a new password, it lets you generate a password, and it can go anywhere from 4 characters to 40 characters. So I just max it out to 40 characters, which is really long. Some websites won't even let you have passwords that long, but Google will. So when you're doing a Google account, you can max it out to 40. And then you have options to include letters, mixed case letters, digits, symbols, and avoiding ambiguous characters. So like zeros and O's and those kinds of things. So I just select all of those boxes, which means it just looks like, once it generates a password, it looks like the computer just vomited, because it's just such a pile of weird stuff. And that's great. And then I keep that password in Dashlane. And after that, then I put it, that's my Google password for an account. And you can change them very regularly, which is always a good idea too. So that's a good, like having an impossible to guess password. Don't just put, an exclamation point at the end of your password or whatever. Like, I'm going to use a capital letter at the beginning this time, and it's just like your name and your birthday or whatever. So don't do that. Use a password manager. If you do need something where you need a PIN number that you can remember, like a 4-digit PIN, what I do is, or if you want to include a password that has numbers and it's something you can remember, I like to go online and just look up like 4-digit random number generators. So for example, for like our home security alarm, I couldn't trust myself to think of a code for that, because I just would come to numbers that I like or numbers that mean something to me. So it was much easier to go online, 4-digit random number generator, And then there's a 4-digit number that means nothing to me that's completely random, and that will be the code. And that way it's like people aren't going to guess it because it's not just, a piece of personal info or something like that. So using a password manager is huge. Now, those are kind of some of the basics. So having separate email accounts, 2-factor authentication, using a password manager, maxing out the number of options for those passwords, pretty simple stuff. Now let's talk about how you can practically start incorporating those things. And if you are watching the video version of this, I do have a screen share set up. There we go. So right now I'm looking at my YouTube channel, like the homepage for my channel. And one thing, this is where I think a lot of people get in trouble, is if you go to the About section of anybody's YouTube channel, that's where they can put in their description, their contact info, they can put links and stuff like that. And that's where there's a thing that says, for business inquiries, view email address. Oh, actually, I don't want that. Mine shows my email address. It shouldn't do that. I should have taken that off. I'm going to do that right now. That's how people have been getting that email address. But the email address that it shows right there is one that is not really used for anything else. So it doesn't, I don't want to say it doesn't matter because it's used for communication, but it's not like tied to any accounts or anything. So that is bad. I'm going to remove that before I post this podcast. But what I actually meant to do was not have your email listed there, or if you do have an email, have it be a very just vague, like, contact@yourdomain.com, or even start a separate Gmail account that's like, say hello to Tom at gmail.com, whatever it might be, just something that's not used for anything else. What I like to do, once I get rid of that, what I like to do is I have an email link in the links on my YouTube channel. And if you click that, it actually takes you to the contact page of my website. And so from there, people can put in their name, their email address, send me a message, and that goes to an email address that I've made just for that contact page. So they don't even get to see the email address for that, which it's just contact@himynameistom.com. It's nothing crazy. But that email is only used for this form. It's not tied to any accounts. It's not used to log into anything. It's not used for any vital communications. It's just for this account. And nobody even gets to see that email address until I reply to them. Because if they fill out this form on my website, they don't see the email address. They just send in the form. I get the email, and if I reply to them, that's when they will see the email. And that works really, really well. So I would strongly recommend that you do that. If you're a YouTube creator, you should have a website, even if it's just a simple landing page. Create a contact page that just has a form. I'm using Squarespace here, so it's just, you can add a quick form that sends an email and have that go to a separate email. I did sign up for the Google, Google Workspace thing where you can have custom domains, and I really like that. So I just went nuts with blank at himynameistom.com, all these different ones. And then I can go into the admin panel and modify those, delete those, add new ones whenever I want. So for example, this contact email address, which is tied to this, contact@himynameistom.com, which I love the way that rhymes. I don't want to say it wouldn't matter if that email address got hacked or messed with, because it would be really inconvenient. But ultimately, I would just delete that account and create a new account, and everything would be fine, because that email is not tied to anything else. It's only tied to this one single form. And when it comes to my Google accounts, that's kind of how everything is. All of the email addresses are tied to one specific thing. So I'm actually going to bring up my list of them here so I can see them and go through them, because I have, of course, personal emails and things, which I don't give those out, the personal emails that I use for personal accounts and stuff. But when it comes to other business related things, I have my main business contact email, which is the one that I would use when I'm actually doing channel related business and stuff like that. And that email is used for communication. So that's the one I'm going to use when talking to brands, when talking to other creators, planning collaborations, that kind of stuff is going to be that email address. But even that one is not connected to any other accounts. It's not like I use it to log into something or anything. Then I have one for booking. So that is Anyone who signs up consultations and stuff, that's their own separate email that handles all of that. So when I check that email, which again is not tied to anything else, I know that the only thing in there is going to be people talking about consultation appointments. There's the contact one that I mentioned about. I created for my course. I created learn at himynameistom.com. So if people have questions with the course, it goes directly there, and it doesn't get used anywhere else. And then I've got, I got one for this podcast. So Tom at enthusiasmproject.com if you want to leave messages for this podcast, and that's not used for anything else. The things that are important, and this I guess is where maybe I should have said this even first. When it comes to the email address that you're actually using for your YouTube channel, that should not be used for anything. And it also shouldn't even be related to your YouTube channel. So you might need to go in and do some fixing there and, maybe even create a new account, add that as an email for your channel as like an owner, and then remove the other one if your current one is used in a bunch of places. But what you wouldn't want is like your channel is first name, last name, and the email that you use to create it is first name, last name at gmail.com, because it's going to be really easy for people to guess. It's going to be just a big target for people to try to mess with you. And what you really don't want is on your channel's about page, you don't want that email address to be the one that is actually used to log into your account. On my about page right now, when I said there's a mistake, I feel like I deleted that. Anyway, there shouldn't be an email listed there, but the one that is listed there is just a generic one for my domain. So it doesn't really matter if people use it. I just don't want them to use it. It's not the one that's used for my channel or anything like that. So the one that's used for my channel, the email address there, has absolutely nothing to do with my channel in the name. So you wouldn't guess it by being like Tom Buck podcasting, Tom Buck likes Rode microphones. Like, it has nothing to do with any of that stuff. And it's not listed anywhere, and I don't use it for anything. So it's almost like a dead account. The only thing that goes in there are emails from YouTube. So if I check it and I see something, that's where I would see notifications about something wrong with my account. So I check that email every day, and it should not have any new messages every day. If it has a new message, that means something is either wrong or somehow a notification is set up somewhere where it shouldn't be, that it's sending me a notification about something. So that's what you want to do for your main email for your channel, is have it be completely unrelated to your channel. Don't have it listed anywhere, and don't use it for any accounts. Like, don't also sign up for your bank or something with it. It's only for your YouTube channel. It's not listed anywhere. And then you check it every day, and it should pretty much never get any messages sent to it. If you get messages sent to it, never, ever, ever reply to them. So just never reply to them. I don't know how people would find it, but if you get a thing that's like, hey, brand collaboration opportunity, don't reply to it at all. Just never reply to anything from that email address. And it's tricky too when it comes to brands, because that's where a lot of creators get burned and their channels get hacked, as they start thinking they're trusting a brand and doing, a collaboration opportunity. And that's when they're giving out personal information, they're giving out payment information, addresses, shipping info, and then they get messed with a lot. So always be sure. I guess was a point I meant to come back to later, but I can talk about it now, which is when you're approached by brands or anybody, always be sure that you know who they are and that they're reputable. If it's just sort of some random company you've never heard of, it's probably not a good idea to reply to them. If you have the email going to a completely generic address, like a contact address or something, then there's probably no harm in replying to them if you want to. But what I do is, even if it's a company I trust, there's a thing people can do where, like, I don't know, I'm going to pick an example. I'm holding a Rode mic in my hand. So we will use Rode as just a hypothetical example. If you got an email that was like person@rode.com, and they said like, hey, we want to give you 1 million Rodecasters, would that be cool with you? Instead of just hitting reply and saying yes, it's a really good idea to verify that email address. Sometimes you can do just a Google search for the email, and you can find the person in like a company directory. So if somebody sends you an email and they say like, hey, I work with this company, Google their email address and you can find them in a company directory. But even that's not always safe, because what sometimes people can do is they can set it, and I don't know how this works because this is beyond me, but they can set it so that the email you get has an email address on it, person@road.com, but the email address that it's actually connected with is something totally different. It's a totally different person. So what I do is, if I get an email, like say I got that email of person@road.com, and they said, hey, we want to give you all these roadcasters because you're amazing and we love you and you're super handsome and stuff. Instead of just hitting reply to that, even if it looks legit, because I'm looking at the email and it says like road.com, which seems very legitimate, what I would do is I would maybe even go to a different email account, like one that I wanted to communicate with them through, and then type in the email address myself, person@road.com, and then send in my reply. And I might paste in the original message that was sent to me. And that way, I know that there's no funny business happening in the link to the email address. I know that it's going to the person that I am sending it to, which has an official company URL. So that's pretty secure for the most part. And also, it's good for the person because they're expecting a reply from you, so you're probably not going to be bothering them by doing that. But if it was something bad happening, like your account, like their account being someone posing as them through their account, like an imposter, and you send them an email and they go, wait, I don't even know who you are, I never sent this, then it alerts them that, oh, somebody is using our company accounts to fish information from people. So that sounds extreme, to not even reply to emails that you're almost positive are genuine, but I promise you it's probably a good idea, because all it takes is just one mistake to mess things up, and it's just real scary. And the other thing I mentioned was adding a separate email for recovery. So when you go into your Google account and your YouTube account, this is what I learned after Bandrew's whole fiasco. You have your email address that you've created for your YouTube channel, and that email address shouldn't be used for anything else, right? But you should also, just in case, add a recovery email. So what I would recommend doing is creating another email, completely just something you'll never use for anything else. It's only a recovery email, and it shouldn't be anything related to you. I don't know, have it be like hotdogbananapowercord@gmail.com. I don't know. And something nobody would guess, and add that as a recovery email, and then check it regularly, and then you should be okay. That way, if something happens to your main account, you have another way of getting back into your channel. And it's a good idea to check this stuff often. I mentioned that earlier, and the reason I'm bringing that up again is because YouTube talks about, I mentioned this on like the couples table and some other stuff this week, but YouTube talks about take a break from your analytics and yada, yada, yada. And we'll get into this in a bit in another episode. But I don't think that's a good idea. We talked about it last week too, because if something goes wrong with your email or with your Google account, you don't want to be like, well, I'm not going to be controlled by my analytics, so I'm going to not check them anymore. And then you wait 2 or 3 weeks, and then you check in, and you're like, oh God, nothing was working and something terrible happened. So even these email addresses that are not used for anything, I still recommend checking them multiple times a week. I check mine every day, at least every weekday. And it's annoying, and I don't like having to go through and check them all and double check that everything's there, but it really does only take a second, because you just log in and you see, okay, there's nothing here. There shouldn't be anything here. I'll log out. And then you just do that for all of them, kind of cycle through. It's tedious and frustrating, but to me, if that's something that can help protect the YouTube channel that I've built and put time in and rely on, that's really important, because also from there, if you think about, oh, my thought is just escaping me. It just ran away. If you think about something, but the time you put into your YouTube channel, this is what I was going to say is, and I saw this with Kevin, when his channel was gone, it was like, okay, he's got multiple streams of revenue. I've talked about having multiple revenue streams. It's not a revolutionary idea, but if most of the traffic originally finds you through YouTube, those other streams will suffer as well. So yes, your YouTube stuff, if your channel gets deleted or suspended or whatever, even if you're able to get it back eventually, while it's suspended, you're not making ad revenue. People can't give you super chats. You're not getting channel membership dues. You're not getting anything from there. But hopefully you set up other revenue streams. However, how many people are going to be clicking on Amazon links if your channel's gone? So your Amazon stuff is going to go down, or your other affiliate links are going to go down. If you've got courses for sale, even on totally different platforms, if the YouTube channel is ultimately the main driving factor to send people to all these different places, all of those numbers will go down, even though those things are still up and running. And that's why it's just so important to protect the super valuable asset that is your YouTube channel. So don't use the email for anything else. I've got my different emails. And I mentioned too, I have, personal emails, of course, and ones that I actually use for important stuff, but those are not listed anywhere. Those are only, I'm the only person that knows that. Now, the other thing is the comments on YouTube. And this is something that I learned more about through Bandrew's fiasco and ordeal, which is apparently comments can, your comments that you make on YouTube, not the ones that are sent to you, but the ones that you make with your account, can cause problems. Because if you're somebody like I mentioned, Kevin replies to every comment. I try to reply to a ton of comments. But I've now known of people recently who are just replying to comments on their channel, like they're trying to be up to date and reply to everyone, build community, do all that great stuff. And what YouTube sees is them spamming because they're leaving multiple comments. It's an account that's leaving multiple comments on a single video, which then means that it gets flagged as spam, and the account can be suspended or deleted or given a strike or something, which is really stupid and should not be the case. And then what happened in Bandrew's case is he was leaving comments on other videos, very benign comments, like just either like a dumb joke or just a comment about the video. But in his case, he left somebody had posted a video, something to do with politics in China, and he left a video kind of in support of them speaking out and letting their voice be heard. Just a very benign, I'm glad you made this video kind of a thing. And apparently that comment got so many angry replies and downvotes. And what his theory was, he goes into this in much more detail in his podcast, but what his theory is that comment got flagged as spam so many times that YouTube just automatically deleted not just the comment, but just went to that channel. It was like, oh, spam channel, delete. So that's not even anything you can control. That's just you posting a comment and a ton of people seeing it and flagging it as spam, even if it's not, just to kind of hurt you because they don't like what you said or they don't like who you are. And then your channel gets flagged as being spam or deleted or suspended or something like that. So the reason I bring that up is because this is where there's a very fine line, because leaving comments is a really good thing. And that's something, again, YouTube encourages it. Being an active user of their platform, watching a video, leaving a comment. If you're a creator on the platform, you know that getting those positive comments and stuff really does make a difference. And I try very actively, if I'm watching a video and I have a positive thought about it, I try to leave that comment instead of me watching a video and going wow, this is really good. The person worked really hard on this. Well, anyway, I'm going to leave. I go, oh, this is really good. The person worked really hard. And then I try to catch myself having that positive thought and going, ooh, I should tell them that because they should know since they worked really hard on this video. But apparently, if you do that too much or you just leave comments on too many channels, not as spam. If you are spamming people, yeah, you deserve what you get. But if you're just literally engaging with the platform like a user would, apparently you still need to worry about that also. And that also, I think, for the most part, you probably don't have to worry too much if you're just leaving, hey, great video, I liked this, you're just sort of the normal, benign, neutral comments. But if you're doing something that's if you're trying to be edgy and make an offensive joke, if you're doing something that might set people off in some way or ruffle some feathers in some way, that could be a problem, not because you're violating any rules on YouTube or that your comment would get deleted for that, But because people could see that and then start mass flagging it as spam, which then will get it triggered to be reviewed, and then that could lead to the channel that it's associated with being deleted. And that's very annoying because one of the things YouTube encourages, like I said, is active engagement and participation on the platform with the community. So like, it's this thing where as a creator, you're encouraged to do one thing and then you're also punished for doing that thing. And it's like, that is where things get really frustrating. And that's where I really feel like the development team and the human interface experience team are like, they must like live on separate sides of the planet or something, because it seems like they never communicate with one another. So finding that tough balance is careful. It doesn't mean don't use your channel, your main channel, to make comments, because it's a good thing. And when people recognize you, like if people know your channel and then you leave a comment somewhere, it can be fun for people to see you there. And that's kind of a cool thing. Like it's just kind of a cool thing. I know that like at the point where my channel is currently, there's been a couple times, just a handful of times, I'm not trying to be boastful or anything, but where people will reference my videos in their videos, which is really cool. Say like, I saw this thing on Tom's channel, he talked about blah, blah, blah. Now look at this over here. And they might show a clip or something. If I happen to see that, I really like to leave a comment that says, hey, thanks for letting me be a part of your video. This is super cool. And I think it's neat that it's cool to see like, oh, look, they talk about a person, that person's here in the comments. Like, that's a cool, fun thing to do. And I wouldn't recommend not doing that, but just being very careful with how you use your accounts and stuff. So this is by no means an exhaustive list of ways to safeguard yourself. And I would love to know if there's blind spots that I missed here or recommendations that you have. So feel free to send either text, voice, or video to tom@enthusiasmproject.com if you have any thoughts about any of this stuff or any suggestions or questions or anything, because we can keep this conversation going. This stuff changes also very regularly. So, the strategies that are helpful now might not be totally helpful later on. But the biggest thing to remember is just have separate emails for everything. Be very careful what you sign up for with each email address, and guard the email address that's actually associated with your YouTube account very, very closely. Don't use that for anything else, and check all of these very regularly so you're constantly keeping a pulse on what's happening, and you can hopefully catch any issues before they actually become big problems for you and your channel. So hopefully that's some helpful, practical information that you can put into play by the end of the day. You don't have to do it today. I just like the rhyme that popped up there. Now, before we wrap up this episode, I did say be sure to stick around because I have a reply from last week's episode. And not only is it an audio reply, it's also a video reply. So this is, last week I encouraged people to send me messages if they had any comments, questions, anything about the premiere episode. And this is from Patrick Boberg, who sent in a reply that also includes an original composition.
Hey, Tom, longest time listener watcher, first time video caller. And I have an important comment, question, concern. And I was on my way to come pick up some sushi for dinner tonight for my family. And I was trying to think, what's the best way to phrase this tactfully? And then I realized the only way to do it is in a song. So here we go. Hey, Tom, I'm obviously a big fan. I'm a YouTube member, a podcast listener. I bought a few things through affiliate links. But Tom, let's let the cat out of the bag on a new adventure, a podcast treasure. So if you please answer this one thing. What's up with the Scarcast? What's up with the Scarcast? I know you bought the URL, so seriously, what the HELL? So Tom, the world needs to know. Please share your plans, what can we expect? The Scar Show. Outro. and I guess you can just fade out awkwardly here or do what you want to do. Either way.
I'll do that. Okay. Thank you so much, Patrick. I was cracking up the whole time. If you're listening to the audio version of this, he is in his car in a parking lot playing a ukulele. And it's a good song. It's just a good song. I would not feel comfortable I don't feel qualified hosting a ska-related podcast after hearing that and seeing the checkered glasses. And if you don't know what the heck Patrick is talking about in that song, almost a year ago at this point, there was an episode of The Couples Table where somebody asked a question about music, which was not the topic of the episode. It was like, I don't know, something about YouTube creation, protecting your account, whatever. And somebody was like, something about music. And then we went into a 45-minute divergence about ska and bands and music and stuff like that. And it was really, really fun up until that point. That ended up being like one of our most engaged with episodes where the comments were going crazy, and it was really, really fun. And at the end, I apologize. Like, I'm sorry that I derailed our whole show and turned it into the ska cast over here. And then that became like a running joke, not just on the Couples Table, but on everything. Anytime music gets brought up at all, it's like ska cast. That ska podcast needs to get started where we just talk about ska music and stuff like that. And it's always just been a joke. And then maybe a month ago, I was looking online and I realized that skacast.com was available as a domain for $12, which was great. And so I was like, I'm going to buy this. I think I'm going to like do the Skacast. I'm going to make it happen. And once I ordered that, I took a screenshot of it and sent it to Patrick in like a Instagram message and like, hey, look, I bought skacast.com, but then nothing happened with it. And then Patrick sent me this message last week, and it's so good. Like the song is so good. And so what I wanted to do, my ultimate goal, my original plan was to be able to put this episode out and say like, well, to answer your question, Patrick, you can go listen to the Skacast on whatever platform you get your podcast from. Like I wanted to get it up and running and produce it and the whole thing. By the time this episode came out, that was like my ultimate goal. So that way, that's the best answer to your question is like, it's already up. You didn't even know. However, there was a problem with that, which was I started then last week, like immediately, like last Saturday and Sunday, I started building out like, here's a Buzzsprout page. Let me start submitting things to directories. Everything was good. And even last fall, when I searched for, when we were joking about it originally and I was looking for like, is there already a podcast with this name and stuff? Everything was good. The domain was good up until I submitted it to Apple Podcasts, which wasn't a problem. Apple accepted it. Apple sent me the email saying like, yay, your podcast is listed in our directory. And I was like, cool. And then I went to search for it. And what came up when I searched for Skacast was the Skacast, but it was not my show. It was a different show that started in March of 2020 and has like 30 episodes and is a super active podcast. I have no idea how I missed it, but there's already a ska podcast called the Skacast that is very active and really good. So if you want to listen to it, you go look up the Skacast and do that. And I was kind of bummed out because I was like, how did I miss this? How have I not seen this before? And my whole idea now is sort of going down the drain. And I had the thought for a second because theirs is the Skacast, 2 words, and mine was the Skacast, 1 word. And I was like, that's sort of different, right? Their approach is also very different. A lot of it also leans towards Spanish language, but it's English and Spanish. And they're really like, a lot of it is profiling and interviewing current like musicians and artists and the current scene, the ska scene and all that. So it's a different approach than I was going to take. However, it just makes no sense to have something that's the same name as someone else. And I'm sure they wouldn't appreciate that either. Like, cool, now when we tell people to go look up our show, there's this other one and we have to try to tell them like which one it is. And it wouldn't be good for me should people ever want to listen to the show. And I was bummed out because I came up with the tagline. It was going to be the Skacast, a podcast about ska. But I couldn't use a Skacast name. So sadness. However, the story doesn't end there because I thought, you know what? I get knocked down, I'm going to get up again. And I don't think that is not technically a ska lyric. But the impression that I got was that the people wanted to hear the ska cast, and I just couldn't do it because somebody's already doing it and doing a great job at it. Which, by the way, if for some reason you happen to be from the ska cast and you're listening to this, you should have the domain, and I have it. So reach out to me and we'll figure out a way to have that, because it's a really good URL and you should have that. Anyway, for me, I was like, oh, but the Ska Cast, a podcast about ska, what could I possibly change the name to? This has been a joke for like almost a year now, this whole Ska Cast thing. And then I had an idea and I realized, what if we called it the Ska Podcast, a podcast about ska? It's simple enough, right? And it's kind of even stupider in a good way. So the Ska Podcast, a podcast about ska, is up on all the major platforms where you get your podcasts, including the first episode is live and available right now for you to listen to. So, Patrick, thank you for pushing me to do that. I am bummed it didn't get to have the original name that we wanted, but I'm super happy with how things have turned out, and it's actually up and it's running. I put the new episode out early so that way the people who have exclusive Patreon and YouTube channel membership access to the video version of this podcast will be able to see it soon. But typically I'm going to put new episodes out every Friday, specifically because the Aquabats have a song about how Friday is the best day of the week. And that's going to be my Friday podcast, the Ska Podcast. And I should also say, the first episode is just me, and most of them will probably be me, but I am very much open to not having it just be me, and specifically Patrick for being the catalyst and the scatolist and the person who made this amazing original song. There is always a seat at the microphone at the Ska Podcast table for you anytime. If you want to check it out, you can go to theskapodcast.com, or just wherever you get your podcast. Just look for the Ska Podcast, and you'll probably recognize some of the colors in the artwork, so it should be pretty easy to find. It's got my name and stuff. Right now, there's only one episode and then a podcast trailer. In the trailer, I think I do still refer to it as the Ska Cast, but whatever. It's a fun Easter egg to have. So anyway, that was my big announcement at the end, is I now have a fourth podcast. It's the fourth wave of podcasts for me, and it's the Ska Podcast. So go check that out if you want. It has nothing to do with anything that we talk about on any of the other podcasts or shows or streams. If you just want to talk about ska music and bands and stuff, that's the podcast for you. The first episode details my experience with ska and sort of how I found it, and the journey from like living in a town where people were very obsessed with not ska music to finding my place in how it found its way into my life and stuff like that. So I'm pretty happy with it. I'm super proud of it. And I'm actually really excited for it, because creating something totally different, as much as I love everything that I'm doing, the chance to make something that has like absolutely nothing to do with any of this is sort of cool. Like, it's a very different muscle to flex there. And I'm also very scared, because even though I've been into this music forever and stuff, I'm always intimidated by like music scene stuff, because it seems like people have very strong opinions and strong experiences. And I'm just like, it's a good exercise for me and put myself out there and all that. So anyway, you can go, as soon as you're done with this, you can go listen to the Ska Podcast at theskapodcast.com, a podcast about ska. Oh, it's so stupid, but I love it. Anyway, that pretty much wraps up today's episode. Thank you for listening. Like I said, if you saw Patrick was an awesome example of a video submission right there. And if you're listening to the audio only version, you got to hear his audio. If you have any thoughts about this week's episode, especially to do with protecting your YouTube channel and stuff like that, you can send either just an email or a voice or a video message to tom@enthusiasmproject.com. And I'd love to include that in next week's episode if you want me to. So, with that being said, also, if you want to support the show, you can go to, all the links are in the show notes. You can go to patreon.com/TomBuck. That's where you can get access to video versions of the podcast. And you also get that if you're a YouTube channel member as well. So whatever kind of works for you. And of course, the best way to support the show is to just listen, and thank you for listening. And I appreciate that, because you're giving me the gift of your time, which I always say is your most valuable resource. So thanks so much for listening, everybody. I hope you have a safe, happy, healthy, fun rest of your week, and I will see you next time, or I could see you right now if you go listen to the Ska podcast. Let me play that Ska outro right now. Ska outro.